Commander Ilara Tazari stood perfectly still on the bridge of the Starweaver, her 4 blue arms clasped behind her back as she stared at the view screen. The small blue-green planet rotating slowly before her eyes seemed so unremarkable. Just another life-bearing world circling an average yellow star. Yet the signals they had detected from this planet had brought her exploration vessel across 17 light-years of space. "We're being hailed again, Commander," said her communications officer, a slender Viridian whose skin shimmered with nervous energy. "They're requesting visual contact." Ilara nodded once. "Accept the transmission but maintain our position outside their lunar orbit." The view screen flickered, and the image of the planet was replaced by the face of a human. The alien had light, brown skin, short dark hair, and wore a crisp navy blue uniform adorned with silver insignia that Ilara couldn't decipher. "This is Captain Eric Lawson of the Earth Defense Force's vessel Dauntless," the human said, maintaining steady eye contact with Ilara. "We welcome the Starweaver to our solar system, and thank you for responding to our greeting protocols." Ilara studied the human's face. Their species had been under distant observation for nearly a century, but this was the Galactic Cooperative's first official contact. The humans had progressed unusually quickly from primitive radio signals to what appeared to be faster-than-light communication capabilities. Such rapid technological development was concerning to the Cooperative Council. "I am Commander Ilara Tazari of the exploration vessel Starweaver, representing the Galactic Cooperative of Sentient Species," she replied, her translator converting her musical Murtaxian speech into the human language called English. "We detected unusual energy signatures from your system and came to investigate." Captain Lawson's expression remained neutral. "Those would be our new propulsion tests. We achieved successful faster-than-light travel 8 months ago." Ilara felt her secondary heart skip a beat. The humans had developed FTL technology independently. That was nearly unheard of. Most species required centuries more development or were granted the technology through official first contact. "That is impressive," she managed to say. "The cooperative would be interested in discussing an official diplomatic meeting." "We would welcome that," Lawson replied with a slight smile. "Would you prefer to meet aboard your vessel, or would you like to visit our orbital diplomatic station?" "Our protocols suggest first meetings occur on neutral ground or aboard the contacting vessel," Ilara said. "We would be honored to host your representatives aboard the Starweaver." Lawson nodded. "Agreed. I will assemble a small delegation. With your permission, we'll approach in 12 hours. After the transmission ended, Ilara turned to her science officer. "Run a complete analysis of their ship. I want to know exactly what we're dealing with." "Already complete, Commander," the science officer replied, her crystalline exoskeleton clicking softly as she moved. "Their vessel appears to be primarily defensive in design. Shield technology is present, but primitive compared to ours. Weapons systems are kinetic and low-grade energy-based, approximately 60% as powerful as our own." Ilara frowned. "And their FTL drive?" "Unusual design. It appears to fold space rather than create traditional warp corridors. Less efficient than our methods, but..." The science officer paused, remarkably stable for a first-generation system. 12 hours later, a sleek shuttle departed from the human vessel and approached the Starweaver. Ilara watched from the observation deck as the small craft smoothly docked with their ship. Her diplomatic training had prepared her for many first-contact scenarios, but something about these humans disturbed her instincts. They seemed too calm, too prepared for this moment. The human delegation consisted of 5 members: Captain Lawson, a female officer introduced as Lieutenant Samantha Novak, a tall male scientist named Dr. Alan Foster, and 2 security personnel who remained professionally alert but non-threatening. "Welcome aboard the Starweaver," Ilara said, performing the traditional four-armed greeting gesture of her people. "We have prepared a meeting space according to the atmospheric and gravitational requirements your species provided." Lieutenant Novak stepped forward. She had auburn hair pulled back tightly and intelligent green eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. "Thank you, Commander. We've brought translation devices, but I see you already have that technology." Yes, Ilara confirmed as she led them through the curving corridors of her ship. We've been observing Earth broadcasts for some time to learn your languages. How fascinating, Dr. Foster said, examining the living metal walls of the ship with obvious curiosity. May I ask how many species belong to this cooperative you mentioned? Currently, 47 spacefaring civilizations and over 200 developing species under protection, Ilara replied. The cooperative has existed for nearly 12,000 of your years. They arrived at the meeting chamber, where several of Ilara's senior officers waited. After introductions were complete, Ilara activated the holographic display in the center of the room. Before we discuss potential relations between Earth and the cooperative, protocol requires that we share basic information about the galactic community, she explained, gesturing toward the rotating star map, including potential threats your species should be aware of. The hologram shifted to display a massive reptilian creature with armored scales and multiple rows of teeth. Its eyes glowed with malevolent intelligence. This is a member of the Dravek. Horde, Ilara said soberly. They are not part of the cooperative. The Dravek are a predatory species that considers most humanoid life forms to be prey. They have consumed entire civilizations. The cooperative maintains defensive perimeters around their territory, but their raid ships occasionally break through. Ilara watched the humans carefully, expecting shock or at least concern. Captain Lawson merely nodded thoughtfully. Lieutenant Novak was taking notes on a small device. Dr. Foster leaned forward with academic interest. Do they have any particular weaknesses? Samantha asked, her voice perfectly steady. Ilara blinked in surprise at the practical question. They have poor vision in ultraviolet spectrums and their armor is weaker at the joints. The briefing continued for another hour, with Ilara describing various hostile species and cosmic phenomena that had destroyed unprepared civilizations. With each new threat she revealed, she grew increasingly disturbed by the humans' lack of appropriate fear response. They asked detailed practical questions about defenses and weaknesses, but showed none of the existential dread that most species exhibited upon learning they were not alone, and not safe, in the universe. Finally, Ilara could contain her confusion no longer. Lieutenant Novak, she said during a brief recess, pulling the human aside. I must ask you something directly. Of course, Commander, Samantha replied with a polite smile. Why aren't you terrified, human? I've just told you about predatory species that could view your planet as a buffet. Most species require psychological counseling after these briefings. Samantha's smile remained, but something shifted in her eyes, something ancient and hard that made Ilara's blood run cold. Commander Tazari, she replied quietly. Humans come from a world where everything was trying to kill us before we even developed tools. We've spent our entire evolutionary history being prey, until we decided not to be. We haven't survived this long by panicking at the first sign of danger. She looked directly into Ilara's 4 eyes and continued. Besides, we've been preparing for this moment ever since we looked up at the stars and realized we probably weren't alone. Fear is a luxury we simply can't afford. The meeting between the humans and the Galactic Cooperative representatives continued for several hours. Commander Ilara Tazari found herself studying the humans with growing fascination. They showed genuine interest in peaceful relations, yet there was something in their careful questions that suggested they were always preparing for the worst. Our next scheduled topic is technology exchange protocols, Ilara said, checking her data tablet. The cooperative has strict regulations about... A deafening alarm cut through her words. The lights on the Starweaver flashed from soft blue to harsh red. Commander. Her second-in-command burst into the room, all 4 of his arms moving in agitated patterns. 3 ships just dropped out of hyperspace. They're Dravek raiders. Captain Lawson stood immediately. How far are we from our ship? Too far, Ilara said grimly. They're positioning themselves between us. Standard Dravek tactic. Cut off retreat paths first. The ship rocked violently as the first energy blasts hit their shields. Ilara steadied herself against the conference table. Get to the emergency command center, she ordered her crew. Lieutenant Novak, You and your team should come with us. We can protect you there until— With respect, Commander, Samantha interrupted, her posture suddenly shifting to something more alert and predatory. We might be of assistance. Security Chief Martinez has combat experience. The tall, dark-haired woman who had remained silently watching from the corner stepped forward. Her previously neutral expression had hardened into something cold and focused. 15 years Earth Defense Forces, specialized in ship-to-ship combat tactics, Karen Martinez said crisply. If the Dravek fight anything like you described in the briefing, I might have some useful suggestions. Another blast rocked the ship, this one stronger than the first. The lights flickered. Shield strength at 60%, reported a crew member over the ship-wide communication system. We've lost primary weapons control. They're preparing to board, Alara said, recognizing the Dravek attack pattern. They want the ship intact. And its crew as food, Dr. Foster added grimly. Alara looked at the humans in surprise. None of them showed panic. Only a focused readiness. That was almost unsettling. Take us to your armory, Captain Lawson said. It wasn't a request. 10 minutes later, they reached the emergency command center. The situation had deteriorated rapidly. The Dravek had disabled the Starweaver's main engines and were cutting through the outer hull in 3 different sections. Breach. In Section 7, called out a frantic crew member. They're inside the ship. On the monitors, Alara could see the first Dravek boarding party. They were massive creatures, standing over 8 feet tall with scaled bodies and faces that were mostly mouth filled with razor-sharp teeth. They moved with frightening speed for their size, cutting down 2 security officers before they could even raise their weapons. I thought you said they were cold-blooded, Karen Martinez said, checking the unfamiliar alien weapon Alara had provided. They're moving too fast for reptiles. They have a secondary metabolic system that activates during hunting, Alara explained. It overheats quickly but gives them incredible speed and strength for short periods. Martinez nodded. So they tire? Easily. That's useful. The ship shuddered again. The lights in the command center went out, replaced seconds later by dim emergency lighting. They've cut primary power, Alara said. Secondary systems are holding but won't last long. We need to reach the auxiliary control room to reroute essential functions. How many Dravek are we dealing with? Lawson asked. Boarding parties are typically 12 to 15 warriors, Alara replied. But they've breached in multiple locations. So, potentially 30 to 40 hostiles, Martinez calculated. We need to move now before they secure key areas of the ship. Dr. Foster, who had been quietly examining the ship schematics on a display, spoke up. If these ventilation shafts are large enough, we could bypass the main corridors they're likely to control first. Alara stared at him. You're scientists. Why do you know such tactics? Xenobiology includes understanding predator behavior patterns, Foster replied with a small shrug. And I've played a lot of strategy games. They divided into 2 groups. Alara would lead Captain Lawson and Dr. Foster to the auxiliary control room through the ventilation system. Lieutenant Novak and Security Chief Martinez would join 3 of Alara's security officers to create a diversion. Stay in radio contact, Samantha said to Lawson before they separated. If we don't make it, the Dauntless needs to know what happened. Lawson nodded gravely. Understood. Good hunting. As they crawled through the narrow maintenance tunnels, Alara couldn't help but notice how efficiently the humans moved. There was no wasted motion, no hesitation. They reminded her of hunting animals from her home world, focused entirely on survival. They had almost reached the auxiliary control room when they heard the sounds of combat ahead. Screams, weapons fire, and the distinctive roar of Dravek warriors echoed through the metal passages. 3 Dravek have cornered some of your crew in the room we need to reach, Captain Lawson whispered, peering through a small vent opening. We need to help them. With what? Alara hissed. We have 1 weapon.
Between us!
Without answering, Lawson pulled something from his boot, a small metal cylinder. With a flick of his wrist, it extended into a foot-long baton. Always carry a backup, he said quietly. Dr. Foster, meanwhile, had removed his belt and was doing something to the buckle with a small tool from his pocket. Improvised flash device, he explained at Alara's confused look. The metal in your walls contains compounds that should create a bright reaction with the battery in this. Alara blinked, in astonishment. You made a weapon from a belt buckle? Temporary distraction, not a weapon, Foster corrected. Their eyes are sensitive to sudden light changes, right? The plan worked better than Alara could have hoped. Foster's improvised flash device temporarily blinded the Dravek, allowing Lawson to attack with surprising speed and precision. Within moments, too, Dravek warriors lay unconscious and the third retreated down the corridor, roaring in pain and rage. In the auxiliary control room, they found 2 wounded Murtaxian crew members. One was seriously injured, blue blood seeping from deep claw marks across his chest. Help me stabilize him, Alara said, reaching for the medical kit on the wall. As they worked to save her crew member, another Dravek, larger than the others, with distinctive red markings on its scales, appeared in the doorway. It had clearly circled back around to investigate the commotion. Your species has always been prey, it snarled in the rough trade language of the sector. You should be terrified. The wounded crew member trembled beneath Alara's hands. She felt her own hearts racing with primitive fear as the massive predator stepped forward. Suddenly, from behind the Dravek, a shadow moved. Lieutenant Novak emerged silently, holding what appeared to be a piece of metal piping torn from a damaged wall section. Her face was streaked with something dark. Dravek blood. Why aren't you terrified, alien? Samantha asked, her voice eerily calm. The Dravek spun around, faster than something its size should move. But Samantha was already in motion, her makeshift weapon connecting with devastating precision at the joint where the Dravek's skull met its spine. The massive creature crashed to the floor. Behind Samantha stood Security Chief Martinez, her uniform torn and bloody but her eyes clear and focused. The diversion worked, Martinez said simply. We've secured the primary junction. The other Dravek are retreating to their boarding vessels. Alara stared at the 2 human women, then at the fallen Dravek warrior. Something fundamental in her understanding of the universe had just shifted. Your species, she said slowly, is not what we expected. We get that a lot, Samantha replied with a grim smile. The hours after the Dravek attack were a blur of activity. Emergency repair teams worked to seal the hull breaches while medical staff treated the wounded. Commander Alara Tazari moved through the corridors of her damaged ship, checking on her crew and assessing the situation. 3 Murtaxians had died. 5 more were seriously injured. It could have been much worse if not for the humans. Alara found Lieutenant Samantha Novak helping in the medical bay. The human woman was binding the wound of a young Viridian crew member, her movements gentle but efficient. You have medical training as well? Alara asked, approaching. Samantha looked up. Basic field medicine. All Earth Defense Forces personnel receive emergency medical training. Your assistance has been invaluable, Alara admitted. I've received word that your ship, the Dauntless, drove off the remaining Dravek vessels. Captain Lawson managed to get a message through, Samantha explained. The Dauntless was waiting for an excuse to test their new weapon systems. Something in her tone made Alara pause. You almost sound like you expected this attack. Samantha finished bandaging the Viridian's arm before responding. Not expected exactly, but we prepare for worst-case scenarios. It's what humans do. Later, in the ship's conference room, the human delegation and Alara's senior officers gathered to discuss the attack. The room still showed signs of damage, flickering lights, exposed wiring, but the ship's core systems were stable again. The Dravek rarely attack cooperative vessels directly, Alara explained, displaying the attack data on the main screen. This was unusual behavior. They must have detected your presence and decided to sample a new species. Or they were testing our capabilities, Security Chief Martinez suggested. Her uniform had been replaced with a spare Murtaxian outfit that didn't quite fit her human proportions. Seeing how we would respond, Captain Lawson nodded in agreement. Classic predator behavior. Test the new animal in the environment before committing fully. Dr. Foster, who had been quietly studying the Dravek corpse scans, spoke up. These biological readings are fascinating. Their muscle density is remarkable, and these glands near their brainstem, they secrete combat stimulants directly into their bloodstream. You sound impressed, Ilara observed. Professional interest, Foster replied with a small smile. Understanding how they work helps us figure out how to stop them. A communication alert chimed, and the view screen shifted to show a human face, an older woman with dark skin and close-cropped gray hair. Captain Lawson, good to see you in one piece, the woman said. Lieutenant Novak, Chief Martinez, Dr. Foster, all accounted for? Yes, Admiral Chen, Lawson replied. No human casualties. The Starweaver took significant damage but is stable. Glad to hear it. I'm bringing the fleet to your position. ETA 30 minutes. Ilara blinked in surprise. Fleet? After the communication ended, she turned to Captain Lawson. You have more ships in this sector? The cooperative surveys only detected the Dauntless. Lawson exchanged glances with his team before responding. We have developed certain stealth capabilities. Admiral Chen commands our second fleet. 8 vessels currently stationed behind your moon. 8 vessels? Ilara repeated, her voice rising slightly. Your species only achieved faster-than-light travel recently. 8 months ago? Yes, Samantha confirmed. But we've been building ships for decades, Commander. We just couldn't take them very far until now. Dr. Foster cleared his throat. Perhaps this would be a good time to share some context about human history and psychology. It might help explain a few things. With Captain Lawson's nod of approval, Foster activated his own data device and connected it to the room's display system. Images of Earth appeared. Lush forests, vast oceans, barren deserts, frozen tundras. Earth is what we call a death world, Foster explained. Though it doesn't look it, our planet has an unusually harsh set of evolutionary pressures. Our earliest ancestors survived in an environment filled with predators faster, stronger, and better armed than themselves. He showed images of ancient human ancestors, small and vulnerable compared to the massive predators around them. We didn't have natural weapons. No claws, no venom, no particular strength. What we developed instead was this. He tapped his temple. Problem-solving intelligence, tool use, and most importantly, the ability to anticipate threats before they appeared. The images shifted to show early human settlements, then gradually advancing technology. For most of our history, we weren't the apex predator on our own planet. We had to become one through innovation and cooperation. This mindset never left us. Ilara studied the progression of human development with growing understanding. So when you first looked to the stars, we assumed we wouldn't be alone, Samantha finished for her. And we assumed not everything out there would be friendly. Captain Lawson took over the explanation. 50 years ago, one of our radio telescopes detected fragments of communications that weren't from Earth. It was just scraps, part of a cooperative patrol ship's routine status report that happened to pass close enough to our system. But that was enough, Martinez added. It confirmed we weren't alone, and it lit a fire under our space programs. Wait, Ilara said, her mind racing. You detected cooperative communications 50 years ago, but the cooperative has only been monitoring your planet for 30 years, yes, Lawson finished. We knew about you before you knew about us. Foster's display changed again, showing technical diagrams that Ilara recognized with shock as simplified versions of cooperative technology. We've had observation satellites watching for passing ships for decades, Foster explained. When we detected energy signatures or caught glimpses of technology, we studied everything we could, reverse-engineered what we found, prepared. That's how you developed FTL so quickly, Ilara realized. You had help, unwitting help. We had clues, Samantha corrected. The rest was human ingenuity and a very healthy sense of paranoia. Before Ilara could respond, another alert sounded. Admiral Chen's fleet had arrived, 8 sleek vessels taking up defensive positions around the damaged Starweaver. I see now why the Dravek retreated so quickly, Ilara said quietly, watching the human ships on the monitor. They were smaller than cooperative vessels but moved with surprising grace. "You've been building warships." "Defensive vessels," Lawson corrected firmly. "Earth has had enough wars among our own kind to know better than to seek them out among the stars. But we weren't going to be caught unprepared either." That evening, after more meetings and the beginning of proper repairs to the Starweaver, Elara found Dr. Foster alone in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. "Your species is an enigma, Dr. Foster," she said, joining him by the viewport. "You claim to want peace, yet you prepare so thoroughly for war." Foster smiled sadly. "The two aren't mutually exclusive, Commander. In fact, one often ensures the other." Elara studied him carefully before asking the question that had been haunting her since the attack. "Why aren't you terrified, human? The galaxy is full of predators that have consumed entire civilizations." Foster turned to face her fully, his eyes reflecting the starlight. His reply sent a chill through all four of her arms. "Commander, on Earth, we were never the apex predator. Until we decided to become one. We evolved alongside things that wanted to eat us. Being prey taught us how to think like predators, and that's what truly terrifies the predators of the galaxy. Not our weapons, but the fact that we understand them better than they understand themselves." 3 days after the Dravek attack, the Starweaver had been repaired enough to travel. Commander Elara Tazari stood on the bridge, watching as her crew worked alongside human engineers to finish the last repairs. The cooperation between the species had been surprisingly smooth. "Commander," her communications officer called, "we're receiving a transmission from the Cooperative Council. They're requesting an immediate report on the human situation." Elara sighed. She had been expecting this. News of the humans' rapid technological advancement and their hidden fleet had likely reached the Council through unofficial channels. "I'll take it in my private quarters," she said. The face of High Minister Zorix appeared on her screen moments later. The ancient Galen's crystalline features shimmered with obvious agitation. "Commander Tazari," he began without greeting. "Our sensors detect multiple unregistered vessels near your position. Is your ship under duress?" "No, Minister," Elara replied calmly. "The human vessels are here as allies. They helped repel a Dravek attack on the Starweaver." "Dravek? In that sector?" Zorix's crystal brow furrowed. "Most concerning. But more concerning is your use of the word allies. These humans have not been properly evaluated or approved for cooperative membership." "With respect, Minister, I've spent several days with them now. They are an unknown variable," Zorix interrupted. "A species that has hidden its military capabilities and accelerated its technological development, far beyond natural progression. The Council is sending an assessment team. You will remain in position until they arrive." After the transmission ended, Elara sat quietly for a moment. The Council's concerns were valid from their perspective, but they hadn't seen what she had seen. A chime at her door interrupted her thoughts. "Enter," she called. Admiral Olivia Chen stepped into the room. The human leader carried herself with quiet confidence. Despite her advanced age, Elara had learned she was in her 70s. Her mind remained sharp and her eyes alert. "Bad news from your bosses?" Chen asked, her expression knowing. "They're sending an assessment team," Elara admitted. "Your rapid advancement has raised concerns." Chen nodded, seeming unsurprised. "Standard protocol for encountering a potentially dangerous species?" "I didn't say dangerous," Elara protested. "You didn't need to." Chen smiled slightly. "From their perspective, we appeared out of nowhere with technology we shouldn't have and ships we kept hidden. I'd be concerned too." "What will you do?" Elara asked. "Be honest. Show them who we are, both our strengths and our values." Chen's expression grew serious. "We didn't come this far to start a conflict with the first peaceful civilization we've encountered." The cooperative assessment team arrived 2 days later. Their vessel, the Harmony, was larger than the Starweaver, a diplomatic ship designed to impress. 6 council representatives disembarked, each from a different cooperative species. The humans hosted the meeting aboard their flagship, the Defender. Elara noticed how the council representatives' eyes widened as they took in the vessel's interior. The ship was clearly designed for defense, but its technology was impressive, a unique blend of human innovation and adapted cooperative concepts. "This vessel was constructed entirely within your solar system?" asked Counselor Vreen, a tall insectoid being whose multifaceted eyes missed nothing. "Yes," Admiral Chen confirmed. "We have 4 shipyards in orbit around Mars, our second planet, and 2 more near Jupiter." "You've built 6 shipyards before even making official contact," observed another counselor, her feathered crest rising in what Ilara recognized as alarm. "That suggests concerning priorities." William Hayes, Earth's diplomatic representative, spoke up. He was older than the military personnel, with silver hair and calm blue eyes. "Our priorities have always been the protection of our species," he said. "But protection doesn't mean aggression. We've had the capability to broadcast our presence widely for over a century, yet we chose cautious observation first." "A predator's approach," muttered one of the counselors. "A survivor's approach," Hayes corrected gently. "Our history is filled with miscommunications that led to war. We wanted to understand the rules of engagement before making ourselves known." The questioning continued for hours. The council representatives probed into human history, technology, and intentions. Ilara watched with growing respect as the humans answered honestly but diplomatically, neither hiding their capabilities nor flaunting them. Finally, Counselor Vreen addressed Ilara directly. "Commander Tazari, you have spent the most time with these humans. What is your assessment? Are they a threat to the cooperative?" Ilara considered her words carefully. "They are potentially the most dangerous species I have encountered. Their adaptive capacity and tactical thinking are remarkable." The council representatives shifted uncomfortably. "However," she continued, "they have shown restraint, cooperation, and genuine interest in peaceful relations. When the Dravek attacked, they could have simply retreated to their ship. Instead, they fought to protect my crew, people they had just met." "An interesting perspective," Vreen replied. "But the council must consider—" An urgent alert cut through the meeting. A communications officer from the Harmony rushed in. "Counselors, we've detected a large Dravek fleet moving in this direction, at least 15 vessels, including 2 hive ships." The room erupted in concerned voices. Hive ships carried hundreds of Dravek warriors and were typically only deployed for major invasions. "It appears our earlier encounter was indeed a scouting mission," Captain Lawson said grimly. "The Dravek must have reported finding a new potential food source," one counselor said, looking pointedly at the humans. Admiral Chen exchanged a quick glance with her officers before turning to the council representatives. "How long until they arrive?" "Approximately 26 hours, the communications officer replied. "The nearest cooperative defense fleet is 3 days away," a counselor said, his skin paling to a sickly yellow. "We should retreat immediately and rendezvous with them." "And leave Earth undefended?" Hayes asked quietly. "Your planet is not yet under cooperative protection," Vreen pointed out. "The assessment process takes time, which we no longer have." An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Ilara watched the human leaders exchange glances, some subtle communication passing between them. "We have another option," Admiral Chen finally said. "The Earth Defense Fleet can intercept the Dravek before they reach this system. We have ships positioned throughout the sector." "How many vessels?" Vreen asked, his tone skeptical. 23 combat-ready ships within range," Chen replied calmly. The counselors stared in shock. 23? One whispered. "You've built 23 interstellar vessels in secret?" "Not in secret," Hayes corrected. "Just quietly. And they're not all we have." During the stunned silence that followed, Admiral Chen activated a holographic display showing the positions of the human fleet. The ships were strategically placed throughout the sector, many of them previously undetected by cooperative sensors. "We propose a joint operation," Chen continued. "Our ships, your tactical knowledge of Dravek behavior. Together we can stop this invasion before it begins." High Minister Zorix, who had been silently observing until now, focused his crystalline gaze on Hayes. "How can your species, so new to the galactic stage, propose to challenge the Dravek?" when ancient civilizations have failed? He asked. Hayes's answer was calm but sent a chill through the room. Because we understand something fundamental that the cooperative has forgotten. Sometimes survival requires you to be what others fear. The combined fleet of human and cooperative vessels waited in the darkness of space. They had positioned themselves near a small asteroid belt where the Dravek ships would need to slow down as they exited faster than light travel. It was the perfect place for an ambush. Commander Ilara Tazari stood on the bridge of the Starweaver, which had been hastily repaired enough for combat. Around her, the atmosphere was tense but controlled. The Cooperative Council representatives had reluctantly agreed to the humans' plan, though they insisted on observing from a safe distance. The Dravek will emerge from FTL in approximately 5 minutes, reported her science officer. On the main view screen, Ilara could see the human flagship defender. Captain Steve Bennett had taken command of the Joint Fleet's frontline forces. His ship was smaller than the Dravek hive ships, but bristled with weapon systems that the Cooperative's sensors couldn't fully identify. All ships confirm ready. Status, said Lieutenant Samantha Novak, who had remained aboard the Starweaver as liaison between the human and cooperative forces. I still don't understand how you plan to combat 15 Dravek vessels, including 2 hive ships, Ilara said quietly to Samantha. Even with 23 ships, you're outnumbered, and the hive ships carry hundreds of warriors. Samantha's expression remained calm. Numbers aren't everything, Commander. We've studied the Dravek attack patterns from your database. They rely on overwhelming force and terror. They don't expect resistance. Emergence detected, called out the science officer. Suddenly, Dravek fleet dropping out of FTL. The view screen showed space itself seeming to ripple as the Dravek vessels appeared. They were ugly, brutal-looking ships, their hulls covered in armor plates that resembled scales. At the center of their formation were the 2 hive ships, massive, oval-shaped vessels that dwarfed everything else in the area. They haven't spotted us yet, Samantha observed. Their sensors are sweeping the direct route to Earth. Captain Bennett's voice came over the communication system. All ships maintain position. Wait for my signal. For several tense moments, the combined fleet remained hidden among the asteroids, shields and weapons powered down to avoid detection. The Dravek fleet moved slowly through the asteroid field, their formation tight and predatory. Now, Bennett ordered. In perfect synchronization, the human ships activated unusual devices attached to their hulls. The devices emitted pulses of energy that Ilara had never seen before. What are those? She asked Samantha. Directed electromagnetic pulse generators, Samantha explained. Modified to target specific frequencies used in Dravek neural systems. On the view screen, Ilara saw the effect immediately. The smaller Dravek vessels began to drift erratically. The 2 hive ships slowed, their movements becoming sluggish. Their nervous systems are partially electronic, Samantha continued. A biological adaptation they made centuries ago. Your database mentioned it, but I don't think anyone in the cooperative realized how it could be exploited. All ships, weapons free, Bennett commanded. Target the escort vessels first. The human fleet emerged from hiding, weapons blazing. Their attacks were precisely targeted at the weak points of Dravek ships, the joints between armor plates, the sensor arrays, the engine exhausts. The cooperative vessels followed, focusing their fire on targets the humans had already damaged. The Dravek, caught by surprise and partially disabled, struggled to respond. Several of their smaller ships were destroyed in the first few minutes. But the hive ships were recovering quickly, their massive hulls absorbing tremendous damage. The hive ships are launching fighters, Ilara's tactical officer reported. Hundreds of small, agile craft poured from the 2 massive vessels. They moved with frightening speed, darting toward the human and cooperative ships. Defensive pattern Delta, Bennett ordered. The human ships, regrouped into tight formations, their point defense systems creating overlapping fields of fire. The battle intensified. 3 human vessels were severely damaged by concentrated Dravek fire. A cooperative cruiser exploded when a swarm of fighters crashed into it deliberately. The Starweaver rocked from near misses as Ilara's crew fought to keep their systems online. "We're losing ground," Ilara said grimly as another human ship took a critical hit. Samantha's face was tense but determined. "Watch the Defender." On the view screen, Captain Bennett's ship was driving straight toward one of the hive ships, taking heavy fire as it closed the distance. "What is he doing?" Ilara asked. "He'll be torn apart before he reaches weapons range." "He's not trying to use conventional weapons," Samantha replied. The Defender pressed forward, its shields failing under the onslaught. Parts of its hull were visibly damaged, venting atmosphere into space. Yet it maintained its course directly toward the hive ship. When the Defender was less than a kilometer from the massive Dravek vessel, it released dozens of small objects that attached themselves to the hive ship's hull. "Boarding parties?" Ilara asked in disbelief. "Not exactly," Samantha said. The small objects detonated simultaneously, creating not explosions but rippling energy fields that spread across the hive ship's surface. The massive vessel went completely dark, all its systems seemingly shut down at once. "Targeted EMP devices," Samantha explained, "combined with a biological agent developed specifically to disable Dravek neural systems temporarily." "You're not trying to destroy them," Ilara realized. "You're trying to capture them." "Dead enemies teach you nothing," Samantha replied. "Captured ones can provide intelligence and examples." The tide of battle shifted rapidly after the first hive ship was disabled. The second, seeing its sister vessel go dark, attempted to retreat, only to be surrounded by the remaining human ships. The smaller Dravek vessels fought with increasing desperation, but without the coordination provided by the hive ships, they were eventually overwhelmed. 3 hours later, Ilara joined Captain Bennett, Admiral Chen, and the Cooperative Council representatives aboard the captured Dravek hive ship. The massive vessel's corridors were eerily silent, the Dravek crew unconscious but alive, secured by human and cooperative security teams. In what appeared to be the command center, a single Dravek was kept conscious. The Horde Master, identifiable by the elaborate markings on its scales and the neural implants embedded in its skull. The massive creature was restrained, but still intimidating. Its yellow eyes tracked the humans with hatred, and something else Ilara hadn't seen in a Dravek before: fear. "What are you creatures?" the Horde Master hissed in the trade language. "You should have fled. You should have been terrified." Captain Steve Bennett stepped forward. Despite his injuries, a deep cut across his forehead and burns on one arm, he stood tall. His expression was not triumphant or angry, just calmly resolute. "We come from a world where fear is a teacher, not a master," he said simply. "We learned long ago that the most dangerous predator isn't the strongest or fastest. It's the one that refuses to accept its place in the food chain." As Ilara watched the Dravek leader's expression change from contempt to dawning horror, she finally understood. Humanity wasn't fearless. They had simply evolved to channel their fear into something more dangerous than terror. Her blood ran cold, as she realized these humans didn't just fight despite being afraid. They fought because they were afraid, and that made them the most formidable species she had ever encountered. The Cooperative Council will vote immediately to accept Earth as a full member, High Minister Zorix announced, his crystalline features reflecting the harsh lights of the Dravek ship. "And we would be honored if humanity would consider leading our defense initiatives going forward." Admiral Chen nodded respectfully. "We would be pleased to share our perspectives. After all, the best defense comes from understanding both predator and prey, and knowing how to be both when necessary." As they left the command center, Ilara fell into step beside Dr. Foster, who had been quietly observing throughout the confrontation. "Your species terrifies me a little," she admitted. Foster smiled gently. "Good. A healthy fear keeps everyone honest and alive." Ilara laughed despite herself. Perhaps humans had the right approach after all. In a dangerous galaxy, fear could be the beginning of wisdom,